Hello! It's time for our book study, Rise of the False Gods, Transformation through Illumination. Tonight we're going to be looking at getting some illumination by looking at law or guidelines. Please note, if it's your first time watching, you can get all of the episodes on YouTube. You can subscribe so you don't miss anything. And always feel free to put in your questions, your comments. I may or may not see them right now. I may see them after I'm done. In that case, I'll catch up with any answers to questions or anything. They are always so welcome, and I'm so glad you're here. So, tonight we are actually starting a new section. Oh, and I have a little tip for you. Are you missing your family that's far away? I know I am. I've got kids in Missouri and Kansas and Colorado and Utah and Florida. Everybody's all over the place, and I sure do miss them. But one of the great ways that you can kind of keep your mind and heart in touch with them is to use a photograph for a bookmark. This is my very handsome grandson, Benny. And gosh, that was 2018. I'm due for new pictures. That was in 8th grade. That means he's in 10th grade already. How does that happen? I don't know. Sure amazes me. But he's my precious handsome. So I use bookmark. I use my kids and grandkids' pictures and stuff for bookmarks, because that way when I'm reading a book, it's right there. Okay, so let's get on with today's study. We're looking on page 61. It's part 3, spiritual law or guidelines. Surely you've seen the movie Pirates of the Caribbean. What's that one? Search for the Black Pearl. And I think everybody has. And even in a movie, sometimes you hear something. I won't say even in a movie. I will say very often in a movie, you hear something that actually sticks with you for life. And that happened when I was watching Search of the Curse of the Black Pearl, whatever it is, Pirates of the Caribbean. And this is right in the book. It's on page 61, so you'll have it if you want to go back and look it up. In the movie, Elizabeth Swann challenges the pirate Barbossa to honor the code. Once, the code was a hard, fast code of conduct for pirates. Over time, it relaxed into, as Barbossa put it, being more like guidelines. She said to him, "Wait, I claim," oh golly, what is the word? But she claimed like sanctuary, like, remember the code. And he said, "Oh, a code, it's more like guidelines." And I think that's the way today we look not only as civil law, but also spiritual law. I think one of the reasons that happens is because there's very often a gap between the cause that we send forth and the effect that comes after it. Let's see, everything is kind of watered down, reduced. It's gone from being I'm a child of God to, well, I'm only human. No, we are children of God, therefore we live to a higher standard. Like Barbossa, we rationalize the laws to fit the way we want it to be. But no matter how hard we try to change the facts, the truth is still there. Whether or not we live under principle is always active, even if there is a time lapse between the cause and the effect. I will give you a clue about how you know when you are growing spiritually. You know, because the time between the cause you send forth and the effect you get comes a lot faster. And that's a good thing because it means you are aware and you see what is happening as an effect of a cause that you sent forth. It doesn't matter whether or not we want to acknowledge that we live under principle or whether we even choose to see it, because its principle is at work anyway. Gravity is always at work. It doesn't matter whether you believe in gravity or not. You know, if you don't believe me, go and jump off the railing at your house. Hopefully you're not on a second-story balcony, because that could be pretty deadly. But gravity is always there. That is a scientific principle, a scientific law. It's the same thing with spiritual law. It's always working, but the thing is, it's easier to ignore because we can't see it immediately. And very often, when we get the effects for the causes we send forth, we don't recognize it for what it is. One of my favorite examples is you cheat on your taxes, and sometime after that, you get a flat tire, and it costs you as much as you saved in taxes you are paying for new tires. Well, you got some new tires out. Bad things are happening. This is in the book, so I am reading. Bad things are happening in increasing numbers and severity. Now, I can see a lot of my Unity friends with their hair standing on edge right now. You said the word bad. There's nothing really bad. Everything is neutral. God is neutral. No, actually, if you do jump off the porch railing to fight gravity and you come out with a broken ankle, yeah, that's bad. There is in the human realm. In the human realm, we do experience plenty of negative things. Doesn't mean it's an ultimate spiritual truth. It's a scientific fact. Okay, we'll get into healing at another whole time. That's where we can take this human thing and raise it up to heal. Anyway, many have little regard for laws and few, if any, consequences. It seems like people get away with stuff all the time, doesn't it? You're like, man, what's going on with that? That's not ours to decide. We don't know what's going on in another person's life if we see them behaving badly. Ultimately, the law of cause and effect will swing back. It's the way it works. And we have to remember, in the Bible, it says that God said, "Revenge is mine, saith the Lord." What that is, saith the Lord, is the law, the spiritual principle. The cause that goes forth, the effects will come sooner or later. And we are not to be the watchdog over anyone else's effects. So that's why it says, don't judge by appearances. You don't know what's going on underneath it all, how it all happened. We have to do the right thing, teach the right thing, live the right thing, share the right thing, and people got to do what they got to do. Let God handle it. Give it to God. That's a hard thing to give it to God, isn't it? I give it to God, and 5 minutes later, I got it sitting back in my lap again. And, but when we try to do other people, and we try to be God for someone else, you know what? It does not work out well because we are not God. So don't try to be God. We are children of God. We are powerful, all kinds of good things, but we are God of ourselves. Okay. All right, I'm moving on to the second paragraph. Laws, both religious and civil, are for our protection and highest good. Laws provide safety, justice, order. Now, see, that's one thing. We were talking about laws. Whatever town you're living in, think for a minute about that part of town. Where I live, about, let's see, you go out of my driveway and drive down and get to 151 and you're turning around going into Middletown. That stretch between Moodus Leesville Road and getting onto the road to Portland, oh my stars, people pass in the no passing zones. They take chances. They speed. It's really there's a stop sign that more than once someone has blown through as I was driving by. The law is there to protect us. It's not there to make us unhappy. Same thing with spiritual law. We either live in harmony with it or we don't. Now, in the beginning, we are taught the laws or the rules by elders with wisdom and experience, Lord willing, because we don't, even though we have an inner knowing, because our spirit always knows, but as we start to grow, we have to learn the law of the land, the way it works in my house, the way it works in, when you get that driver's license in traffic. Now, through the process of growth and maturity, we have the potential to no longer need rules at all. Why? Well, we go from a stage of knowing about them and being compelled to follow them to understanding them, so we live with a conscious understanding, to actually unconsciously we absorb them, we assimilate them. In Buddhism, they call this the 9 incapabilities. But we're going to do that another day. But essentially it says one that has reached enlightenment is incapable, for example, of stealing, is incapable of lying. It doesn't even enter their mind. That's where we want to go. We want to reach that state of consciousness. Our children, if you have children, or if you were a child, which you most likely were, we started out with a crib. The crib kept us safe in the house. Then we graduated to a playpen. That gave us a little bit more room. Then maybe we had little gates. I had little gates in my house so that my kids had their whole room to play in, but they couldn't get out and get into trouble in the rest of the house. And then when they got old enough, the gates came down. It's wonderful because we measured their safety with the rules. Once we get to really comprehend spiritual law, how it works, we don't have that stress of feeling like we are being imposed on. Now, there is, and this is something that we want to remember as well, that, like we say, well, why is this happening to me? Let's see, spiritual principles involved. What about the times when it seems bigger than that? Well, we are not only individuals. Remember, we are a part of a collective. So as the collective loosens the rules by human standards as opposed to spiritual standards, it will affect us. If we keep the speed limit going higher than it's safe, somebody says, well, I think we should be able to go 70 miles here. I get terrified when I go to Texas and go 70 miles, 75 miles an hour, and I'm like, when I drove cross country, there were places where it was 80 and 85 miles an hour was the speed limit. Yeah, I broke the speed limit, I'll tell you that. 65, 70. I have my inner speed limit. Anyway, as we mature spiritually and as we understand spiritually, we no longer need the rules because we live by them. Of course, we're currently living at all levels of spiritual development, so we're living with people who don't understand civil law or spiritual law. So that is where we've really got to be grounded in ourselves about its laws, not guidelines. When we take laws and we turn them into guidelines when we're not spiritually mature enough to live within them, that's where a lot of trouble comes in. There is a big time gap, if we're looking on the collective level, between climate change. You know, the little things we do these little things and drive our car, have a high emissions car, you know. We don't realize it because it adds up and adds up. Of course, we saw when we were shut in during the COVID shutdown, the skies turned blue, skies that were normally foggy and smoggy. So we saw the impact. But when the impact comes gradually, we don't notice it. That's why we want to always take time to grow, pay attention spiritually. All right, financial ruin. It happens, you know, a little overspending at a time, and then all of a sudden the bills can no longer be handled. Addiction, the same thing, you know, it starts off a little, and very often, which we are having a hard time dealing with in these days, the addictions are to prescription medications that are prescribed by a doctor for a condition, but then they take a hold, and then our body sometimes lies to us and tells us it's in pain when it doesn't because it's becoming addicted. So you see how many ways the outside affects us, but it doesn't change the spiritual principles. They're still working. Behind religious and civil law, that's another one. Religious laws, which are not necessarily spiritual laws. They're very extensive in many cases, and it's really people that probably may not even be that spiritually involved that are telling us how we need to live. We have to be in touch with our inner being, with our inner guide that I will put the truth within them. I will put my law within them. I will write it on their hearts. Inside we know. We have to really tune in, get those vibes out that we can detect the energy around us. Okay, behind religious and civil law is spiritual law, also called principle. Principle is that which is absolute, eternal, and unchanging. Let's see. Okay, Diane, I'm really not sure. Why does any of this matter? I make efforts. I'm not sure what that means. You can either add to it now or we can talk about it later. I'm not quite sure of the question. So we'll explore that later. And maybe even talk about it tomorrow night when we get going. Okay. An example of principle is mathematical principles. 1 + 1 will always be 2. It's something we can count on. That's why principle is good. It's something we can count on. But because we have free will by our Creator, we have the choice to live in alignment with the law or not. We may be spiritual beings, but we are having a human experience. You know, I think about that when I see people who do, what do they call it? Rock face climbing and stuff like that, jumping out of airplanes, you know. I can't figure that one because I figure, I know how the law of gravity works, and from there to there is too far for me to chance it. Sometimes I trip over a rock and I don't, come out on the hurting end. Okay. Human nature, which is self-centered, so the human nature, as you recall, is more self-centered. We are a spiritual being, but we are dealing with our human nature. Oh, now I lost my place. Compels us to look for a loophole. When we want to do something, and we shouldn't be doing it, we look for a loophole. We look for a way it's okay to break the civil law, the religious law, or the spiritual law. How about those days when you're late for work? Or those days when there's someone just poking ahead of you? Now that law that says this is a no passing zone is for your safety. If you decide to pass that person because you're late for work, not a good idea. You see, it's we look for a way around. Well, I'm late for work. I got to get out of here. They're going too slow. Those are called rationalizations. We're telling ourselves rational lies. When we live contrary to spiritual principle, we find our lives plagued with problems and suffering. This is not God punishing us. It's principle working as it should. It's not a personal affront. The word law, translated metaphysically, is Lord. There's one primary law, and that is the law of cause and effect. It has many forms of expression. We're going to look at that down the road a little bit. But an example is sowing and reaping, the law of giving and receiving, etc. But behind it is always cause and effect. If we sow, which is sowing seeds is an activity, it's a cause. If we cause carrot seeds to be planted, the effect will be, if we take care of our carrot seeds, carrots. It will not be peaches. Now, some people think, well, you just have to think positively, think about what you want. You're going to get carrots. It doesn't matter how many times you affirm you just planted peach pits, you're going to get carrots. But can you get peaches from carrot seeds? Yes. You want to know how? You plant the carrot seeds, you take good care of them, you water them, you fertilize them, you get yourself a big old bunch of good, big, healthy carrots, and you barter for some nice, juicy peaches. It all works out together for good. See, it's not that you cannot get peaches if all you have is carrot seeds. It's what you do with the seeds that you have. Sometimes we tend to, especially if we're in a bad mood, we feel like a loser. I feel like a loser. We have to always look for the possibilities. There are possibilities everywhere. I was blessed with that's the way my head works. That's the way my mind works. If something is going wrong, I look for all the possibilities. Maybe sometimes I should give up a little quicker, but I'll tell you something. I gotten a lot of things done that some people would have said couldn't be done. You know what they say, what is it? For every person that says it couldn't be done, there's someone doing it. You can be a doer. You can make it happen. The mind is powerful, but it only works within the parameters of principle. Okay, okay, we're at the end. That was a quick one tonight. So it just says, through the law of mind action, focused thought, you can attract peaches when you plant carrots. It's not magical, it's metaphysical. And there's a quote at the end of this section, and it says, there are many plans of causation, but nothing escapes the law. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. That is from the Kabbalion, which is an amazing metaphysical, spiritual book. It came from the Jewish tradition, and it's a book of mysteries. So, that was fun. I hope you had fun. I had fun. Let's see, it's Friday. I believe we will be doing a book study tomorrow night. First of all, because we missed Monday for the holiday, and it's the end of camping season. So we have campers checking in, but it's not like summer. They're not coming in late because it gets dark early and they want to be in already. So I would say, unless you hear otherwise, we will be doing book study tomorrow night, and we will be talking about how spiritual laws and false gods work together. Hope you had fun. Hope I see you tomorrow. God bless. Have a good night.